अस्सलाम वालेकुम ब्यूटीफुल पीपल। मिस्टर सुल्तान मलिक ने ये कुछ डाटा कलेक्ट किया है जो आज मैं आपके साथ शेयर करूंगी। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल we'll discuss about the wildlife. Wildlife refers to the undomesticated animal species which has come to include all plants, fungi and other organisms that grow or live wild in an area without being introduced by humans. Wildlife can be found in all ecosystems. All non-domesticated animals and plants are referred to as non-cultivated plants are referred to as wildlife habitat. A species habitat is those places where it can find food, shelter, protection, and mates for reproduction. Clear? In ecology, a habitat is the type of natural environment in which a particular species of organism lives. It is characterized by both physical and biological. Habitat types include polar, temperate, subtropical, and tropical regions. What is habitat loss? Habitat loss can be described when an animal loses their home. Every animal in the animal kingdom has a niche, a biological role that a species plays they're in their animal community, and without their habitat they no longer have a niche. Reasons of habitat loss by humans: agriculture, farming, harvesting natural resources for personal uses, for industrial and urbanization development. Habitat destruction is currently ranked as the primary cause of species extinction worldwide. Clear? What is ecological niche? The ecological niche describes how an organism or population responds to the distribution of resources and competitors. For example, by growing when resources are abundant and when predators are the organisms that feed on the prey. Parasites are the organisms that live inside or outside the body, take benefit from the host, and in return give them harm. And pathogens are also referred to as uh, types of parasites, okay, are scarce, and how it in return alters those some factors, for example limiting access to resources by other organisms, acting as the food source for predators and the consumers of prey. Clear? Okay, so simple. Ecological niche: each species occupies a niche in the community. A niche is the role the species plays and includes the types of food it eats, where it lives, where it reproduces, and its relationship with other species. The type and the number of variable comprising the dimensions of an environmental niche vary from one species to another, and the relative importance of particular environmental variables for a species may vary according to the geographic and biotic contents. Okay, home ranges. A home range is the area in which an animal lives and moves on a periodic basis. We also have some home ranges in which we move on daily basis. Territory and home ranges, nest, den, or lair. A home range can overlap with each other. Territory. Territory is the socio-graphical area that an animal of a particular species consistently defends against animals of other species. Animals that defend territories in this way are referred to as territorial. Clear? Territoriality. Territoriality is the behavior by which an animal lays claim to and defends an area against others of its species and occasionally members of other species as well. The territory defended could be hundreds of square miles in size or only slightly larger than the animal itself. It matters, okay? It may be occupied by a single animal, a pair, a family, or entire herd or swarm of animals. Territory. Some animals hold and defend a territory year round and use the territory as a source of food and shelter. Other animals establish a territory only at certain times of the year when it is needed for attracting a mate, breeding, and or raising a family. What are the zones of biosphere? Biosphere is the region of the surface and atmosphere of the earth or another planet occupied by living organism to carry out the activities of biodiversity. Biodiversity refers to the variety of species in a place, conservation and sustainable use of natural resources. Protected areas are traditionally organized into three interrelated zones known as core area, buffer zone, transition zone, or area of cooperation. What are the zones of biosphere? The buffer zone is less protected forest area near the sanctuary that serves as a protective barrier for the core area. Clear? What is depredation? Wildlife depredation refers to the attack of wildlife on livestock. Crop depredation causes property damage. Ethology. Ethology is the scientific and objective study of animal behavior, usually with a focus on behavior under natural conditions. Wildlife protection. More specific threats to biodiversity are posed by deforestation, estimated at 1% annually, overgrazing, soil erosion, rampant hunting and fishing, and agricultural practices. As a result, it is estimated that at least 12% of the flora is threatened and several of the fauna species are threatened too. However, the real status of the most species remains unknown. Some of the major threats posed by human activities are discussed below, that is population growth, irrigated agriculture, hunting, deforestation and loss of habitat, fragmentation of habitat, trade, pollution, etc. Density. Density refers to the number of animals per unit area. Abundance occurs of a sufficient particular area according to carrying capacity. What is marking of territory? As earlier said, that territorial behavior is the behavior by which an animal or a group of animals protect its territory from incursions by others of its species. Clear? They mark their territory. Territorial boundaries might be marked by sounds such as a bird song or scents such as pheromones secreted by the skin glands of many mammals. Lions have also set their specific territories so no other lion can enter this specific area. Marking of territory. Territorial behavior in zoology, the methods by which an animal or a group of animals protects its territory from incursions by other of its species. Territorial boundaries may be marked by sounds such as bird song, etc., or scents, pheromones. If such advertisements does not discourage intruders, chases and fighting follows. Clear? Marking of territory. Territorial behavior is adaptive in many ways. It may permit an animal to mate without interruption or to raise its young in an area where there will be no little competition. Where will be little competition for food, it can also prevent overcrowding by maintaining an optimum distance among the members of population. Territories may be seasonal. In many songbirds, the mated pair defines the nest and feeding area. Youngs are fledged. In communally nesting birds such as gulls, their territory may simply consist of the nest itself. Marking of territory. Wolf packs maintain territories in which they hunt and live. These areas are aggressively defended from all non pack members. The male cougar has a large territory that may overlap the territories of the several females but is defended against other males. Okay? Responding to scent marks, the inhabitants of the overlapping ranges also avoid each other except for breeding. Marking of territory is by urination, secretion, scratching, bird song, scent, or pheromones. What is the need for wildlife protection? Wildlife conservation is mandatory as it comes with numerous benefits for both animals and humans, including promotes pollination and continuity of native plant species, medicinal values, aesthetic benefits, it's fun and entertaining, preserves heritage and culture. Needs of wildlife protection also include promotes tourism attraction, protection of biodiversity and endangered species, protecting ecological stability and balance, can enhance food security, education and learning, important for the identification of new plants and animal species for research, economic benefits with tourism, creation of jobs, protection the livelihood and knowledge of indigenous people. It serves as a preserve for future generation. What is wildlife tracking? Wildlife tracking is a process whereby biologists, scientific researchers, or conservation agencies can remotely observe relatively fine scale movements or migratory patterns in a free ranging wild animals using the global positioning system, GPS, or other methods. All tracking methods used for wildlife are, how do we know that animals are here? Okay, by scat and pellets, trails, runs, and escape routes, dense burrows, beds, lays, and nests. What function do burrows, nests, beds provide? Tell me about them. Gnaws, chews, rubs, and marking signs tell what animals made them. Clear? Bones, teeth, fur, and feathers. Bones, teeth, and furs and feathers are also here. Era of radio tags. Before radio telemetry, the study of animal movement depends on live trapping and tagging animals and then hoping to recapture them somewhere else using color coded collars that allowed observers to identify animals from afar. Basic components of radio tracking system: transmitting subsystem and receiving subsystem. Clear? Three types of radio tracking are very high frequency satellite tracking or GPS. Very high frequency radio tracking, radio telemetry was the first real time technique used to track individual animals from a distance. A transmitter tied to the steady animal broadcasts pulse signals in the VHF portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. A VHF radio transmitter is an electronic tag that emits a very high radio frequency signals that can be used to locate the animals. The user must track the signal using a receiver and directional antenna, which must typically be within a few kilometers or less of the animals to detect the signal. GPS tracking is the newest technology being used to track wildlife. In GPS tracking, a radio receiver, not a transmitter, is placed on the animal. The radio receivers pick up signals from the spatial satellites. These techniques and other help scientists better understand the process. Okay. Since its inception in the 1960s, wildlife radio telemetry has become a valuable tool to track the movement and behavior of animals. A tracking receiver designed for radio telemetry should be used to pick up the transmitter signal. An antenna is cable to the receiver. The frequency range of the receiver must match up with the frequency the transmitters are using. Advanced receivers utilize digital signal processing techniques. Clear? These are the tracks that scientists are using. Potential alternatives for radio tracking are the use of hair plucked from free ranging animals, the use of scats both for DNA analysis. Disadvantages are would require considerable field effort. Lab analysis of DNA are problematic. The scat technique would provide little of the complementary data. Wildlife conservation is the practice of protecting animal species and their habitat. It is achieved particularly through legislation, Endangered Species Act, establishment and protection of public lands, and responsible public practices that conserve wild animal population. Xc2 conservation. Xc2 conservation literally means off-site conservation. It is the process of protecting an endangered species, variety or breed of plant or animal outside its natural habitat, for example, by removing part of the population from the threatened habitat and placing it in a new location, which may be a wild area within the care of humans. Examples are captive breeding, aquarium, and botanical gardens. In situ conservation include the conservation and management and monitoring of biodiversity in the same area where it is encountered, that is protected area. A clearly defined geographical space, recognized dedication and dedicated and managed through legal or other effective means to achieve the long-term conservation of the nature with associated ecosystem services and cultural values. Why conservation is important? For maintaining a healthy ecological balance on this earth, animals, plants, and marine species are as important as humans. But sadly, today many of the animals and birds are getting endangered. The natural habitat of animals and plants are being destroyed for land development farming by humans. Hope you enjoyed the video. Stay motivated. God bless you. Allah Hafiz.